Hello, hi everybody. Welcome to another live stream, another Thursday, another live stream. So good to see you all here. And thanks so much for all the nice messages I already see in the chat. Means a lot to me. So yeah, thank you all so very much. Of course, also for tuning in. I figured there's so much stuff going on. Obviously, there's always a lot of stuff going on, but especially the last few weeks with the entire Claudebot open claw thing, AI in general, and all that stuff. I get so many questions below my videos and in messages and so on. So I figured, well, we might want to have another stream where I share my perspective on certain things, where I hear your perspective, your thoughts and questions, and yeah, just hang out a bit and have a good time, hopefully. That is the plan. So yeah, hi everybody who's tuning in. So amazing. So I already saw one nice statement here. Where is it? I think we developers will not exist anymore in 2 or 3 years. We can talk about that. Large language models evals was a topic. I'll try to pick up on that. And if I want to do a demo of Claude and OpenCode, yeah, I'd love to do more on OpenCode. I've used it quite a bit over the last months too. Want to get a bit deeper into it. But then definitely that is something I also want to cover for sure. And yeah, and as I said, I read all those nice messages. Means a lot to me. By the way, regarding courses being on Udemy Business or anything like that, that's not entirely in my control. A lot of stuff on Udemy is not in my control, which is why my own platform, Academine Pro, will be a higher priority for me going forward too, which does not mean that I don't release anything on Udemy, but I can't control what ends up in the business catalog there and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't want to focus on that today. Instead, I wanna, well, let's maybe start with the 2 comments or questions I already saw. I'll start with the large language models evals question. I would love to share more on that. And in case you don't know what that is, let's see if we can find a good guide. Is this good? I don't know. The idea behind large language models evaluations, or evals as they're typically called, is that you try to, in the end, write tests, like unit tests, you could say, that judge the quality of the output a large language model generates for you, which could be important if you're building an application that uses a large language model as part of its service or as part of what it does. Then, just like the other parts of your application, you might want to test if your model behaves the way, or if the way you're using it behaves the way you want it to behave. And evals can be one way of doing that. And one approach, for example, could be that you have another large language model evaluate the output of another one. There also are algorithm-based evaluations, though. But I'll be very honest, LLM evals is not something I have had a super close look at yet, or I have done a lot with, simply because this is such a fast changing landscape. It's all evolving so quickly. Models are evolving so quickly, and there are certain problems that just can't really be solved about large language models right now. Prompt injection, for example. That I have a hard time coming up with what exactly to test in which way, to be honest. And then there was the other statement about developers not being a thing anymore, essentially in 2-3 years. I think that right now, like maybe, I don't know, for the last 6 weeks or so, I think it started before Christmas, maybe in early December. A lot has shifted for many developers, or the feeling has shifted quite a bit. Because I don't know why exactly. I think it's the combination of many things. So we had things like Opus 4.5 being released, a model that's really capable. And then we also had better tooling. And of course, tooling got better over time. It wasn't suddenly better. It got better over time, maybe linearly. But now, or we were at a point where these two things combined perfectly, and suddenly got a lot of developers to realize that you can get a lot done with AI combined with tools like Claude Code or Cursor or GitHub Copilot. And by the way, I don't think there is the single best tool, and it also changes all the time which tool feels better or performs better. But these are all great agentic engineering tools, and combined with models like Opus 4.5 or Codex 5.2 and probably a bunch of other models that are about to be released, we're now at a point where agentic engineering is really, really for more developers a thing, I think. And I have said it in many videos before already that I use AI a lot for programming. And for me too, over the last year, it definitely went from I have AI generate, I don't know, 20, 30% of my code up to not 100 maybe for me personally. But I would say I'm at 90% or something like this. Though, to be clear, with that, I don't mean 90% and I don't look at it at all. I mean code, which I, of course, then review, where I also have my very clear instructions, where I make a plan, because for me, good plans make a huge difference. And I have a lot of clear opinions on the code I wanted to generate, which features, which patterns to use, which libraries. So there's a lot of steering involved. But when it comes to really typing the code, that is mostly done by AI for me now. And that has definitely changed over the last year or so. And I think many developers are now feeling that. And I don't think, and I've said that before, and I still believe in that, I don't think the conclusion is that now in a year or so, we don't need developers anymore. Because, at least for me, and I might be totally wrong, but at least for me, I see that my guidance, my planning makes a huge difference. And it's not just a philosophical difference. It really is a difference regarding performance, bugs I encounter if I give it less guidance. And the whole vibe coding thing it might be good for throwaway software, for one-off scripts where you don't care too much about maintainability or potential bugs as long as it gets the job done you want to use it for right now. But outside of that, I still don't see the vibe coding thing to be useful. So for everything you want to sell, for everything you want to run for a bit longer, everything you need to maintain, I don't see vibe coding as a solution there. And when it comes to steering AI, that requires experience as a developer. That requires knowledge about patterns, about the underlying technology. And I think a lot of things will change. You might not need to be able to work with very advanced React features and write the code for it yourself, but you need to know about them and you need to understand them and you need to know when and why to use them. That's my belief. And I still think that is true, even though we're now using AI more and more as a tool to write more and more code. So that was a lot of talking, but I think that is an important thing, and that is my opinion on this. But of course, I want to hear about your opinion too, and I'm sure plenty of opinions have been shared already, so let me catch up with the chat. It no longer makes sense to code by hand yet. So that is essentially what I mean by that. I still go in there to fix some things from time to time, but overall, I try to steer it. And never talk about AI hype. Well, you don't have to tune in, of course. But yeah, AI will be a topic because it is that big topic that influences everything right now. So I had a detailed stream about comparing React and Vue and Angular last week. This week, It'll be about the current state of web development, and obviously AI is a part of that. Um, so yeah, thank you all for the nice messages again. So amazing. Um, can I make a Jenkins course? I have basically zero experience with Jenkins, so not planned right now. Do I have a strong enough machine to experiment with large language models locally? No, I don't. Uh, I do like the idea behind large language models that you can run locally, and I think they can be great for stuff like summarizing text, even image analysis. And I do use models with Olama for that locally, for certain tasks or certain tools I wrote myself. But when it comes to coding, agentic engineering, and stuff like that, that's no, doesn't work with locally running models. When starting every new project in Next.js, I always confuse which state management tool I need to use client-side state libraries like Redux or server-side state. I don't think you need Redux necessarily anymore. You can, of course, nothing wrong with it. But I think when working with Next.js, you can manage a lot of state on the server. You can manage state in the URL bar with search params, or of course locally with use state. And if you need cross-component state, React Context can get you quite far. And Zustand, for example, Zustand is another excellent state management library that's a nice alternative. But of course, there also is nothing wrong with Redux. I just see it less and less being used today than it was like a couple of years ago. So vibe coding is the future. Well, no, don't state it like a fact. It's not a fact because for me it certainly isn't. So obviously it can be for you. But I don't see vibe coding as the future. 100% not. If vibe coding means I don't know the code, I don't understand the code, I don't care about the code, I don't see that as the future. Might be the future for certain applications, for certain tasks, as I said before. If I need a quick utility script that does something, I might just vibe code it up, don't care about the code, 100%. Also, for example, with OpenClaw, if AI agents like this become more and more of a thing, and and certain security issues are solved, and I definitely see that happening. I think AI agents like OpenClaw will be very likely part of the future, an important part of the future. And I 100% see that you will have software being written behind the scenes by agents like this, which you never see. So I agree on that. But when we talk about commercial software, which I'm 100% sure will persist because it's about more than just the code, I don't see vibe coding as the main and only thing being used there, because that introduces a bunch of problems which you very likely can't afford if you're selling software like this. Now, obviously, of course, all that is wrong if models and tooling turn out to develop in a way where where you get 100% perfect and secure code, or where you can have certain self-evaluation loops that guarantee that certain problems won't appear. But I'm not convinced if that can be guaranteed anytime soon, and it will need to be guaranteed for certain use cases, for many use cases, in order to be viable. Coping hard, most jobs are gone. Okay, well, goodbye then. I hope you are right. Did you think a year ago that 90% of writing code today would be AI? No, I wouldn't have thought about this. I wouldn't have thought 1 year ago that it would be 90% by now, I think. But to be honest, I wouldn't have put a number on that a year ago. I have reached a point that I don't write any code myself anymore. I just control Claude Code, and in 2 years, also that will be gone. I don't know. I just explained my point of view on that, and obviously, that could be totally wrong. Nobody knows what the future will hold. But yeah, I just laid out my point of view on that, so no point in repeating that. If you believe, or if for you vibe coding works perfectly, then obviously that is that is how the future might look like. It's not my experience. It's just not my experience, to be very honest. Um, if I would let AI write everything without any guidance, and I think, by the way, that's important. I think sometimes, not sure if it's the case here, obviously, but I think sometimes people, developers, vibe code, but give pretty clear instructions, at least implicitly, about what they want, which technologies, and so on and so on. That's not my definition of vibe coding, just to be clear. Vibe coding for me means not knowing anything about the code, not caring about the code, giving no instructions about which patterns, which structure, or anything like that to use. That's my definition. If we have different definitions here, we can come to different conclusions. But that is my definition for vibe coding. It's a very strict definition on not knowing anything about the code, not caring about it. Yeah, thoughts on local open source models? I love them. I absolutely love them. I think tools like Ollama are amazing. In case you don't know, Ollama is a tool you can use for running open models like the Gemma models by Google locally. And I like that a lot. I've built a lot of internal tools that analyze documents, analyze all kinds of stuff, because for analyzing text, for summarizing text, they work really well. For me, at least. I have a MacBook Pro with 64 gigabytes of unified memory, so I can run models like Gemma, 32 billion parameters on it, and I love local models for that. And I think local models will become more and more of a thing, maybe in conjunction with those cloud models, because obviously you need those cloud models, as I said, for agentic engineering. But if we think of agents like OpenClaw, I could 100% see that at some point in the future, you can maybe run it on your device if certain security issues are figured out, or on a VPS, or on some old machine you have. And especially if that is a machine or a VPS that has sufficient memory or anything like that, I could 100% see a future where you have an assistant like OpenClaw running, and certain tasks are handed off to a local model, which is not super capable at advanced agentic tool calling stuff and so on. But if you have like a main agent that may be sitting in a cloud, so that is using an AI model in the cloud, I mean, if you have like a main agent and that agent is calling or handing off certain tasks to locally running models, I could see that being a thing, because that, for example, could allow you to use a model to summarize, let's say, tax documents or anything else which you maybe don't want or legally are not allowed to send off to some model provider. So that is something where I see local models, for example. LLMs are super convenient, no doubt about that. It's all about agentic stuff that I'm not super convinced about. Decision making on their part is still absolute garbage, but research with them is great. Research with AI is really great. And that's one thing besides many others where I use, like probably everybody else, use AI a lot. And like just the regular Google.com AI mode, I think is really great for a quick web search. And there are a lot of implications, by the way, of this shift, which are not great for content providers, because you don't really click on links a lot anymore. At least I don't. I still sometimes do. If I want to dive a bit deeper, or if some article is mentioned, that's interesting. But it will be interesting to see how Google will figure that out, because ultimately they want to earn money through clicks on those links. But yeah, AI for research is great. And as I said, for me, I also use AI for coding and for local utility scripts with local models and all that stuff. Content creators are saying they don't sell courses anymore because AI destroyed the demand. What are your thoughts on that? Well, depends on the kind of courses, I guess. Demand is definitely less, but to be honest, for my courses, um, that started because of this here, developer jobs. Well, that huge boom during the pandemic and then that going down. Now, obviously, AI will not help with the recovery for the traditional programming courses anytime soon, and maybe never, very likely never, to be honest. But on the other hand, all these AI courses sell great. So I can't tell what the impact of AI will be on that, because obviously you can use ChatGPT or Gemini and so on for learning too. You always have like a reversed roles there. You always have to ask for something. And if it's just that they give you a curriculum and then you have to like stay engaged in that chat. And I know that these apps like ChatGPT are working on giving you better learning experiences. I feel like, and of course I hope, obviously, there will always be room for like a guided course where you can watch someone, where you can maybe also like lean back, relax to some degree, and where knowledge is pushed on you and you don't have to actively ask for it, combined with AI ideally, where you have your own AI tutor. But yeah, like so many other things, it's hard to tell how that future will look like. I just, when there is a lot of hype, a lot of fear, and a lot of people telling you that it will 100% be in a certain way and in no other way, and you are dumb if you don't believe in that, whenever I hear something like this, well, yeah, history has proven over and over again that change happens all the time, and dramatic change can happen, and it's accelerating, very likely, but it's not overnight. And things survive or stay important that you wouldn't have thought that they stay important. We're still reading books. I remember that in 2005, it was all about how the internet and Amazon makes books redundant. So you just don't know. And right now I can say for me, AI courses sell very, very well. And I don't know how the future will look like. But I will always find a way of earning money. I'm sure about that. Which AI tools do I use? So for programming, I use Claude Code, I use Cursor, GitHub Copilot. I switch a bit also because I do have courses on them. I want to stay up to date. I want to see how they change. And other than that, it's the research tools I just showed you, essentially Gemini app, ChatGPT. I've tinkered around with OpenClaw. I will continue doing so. For security reasons, I'm not using it anywhere close to its potential. But yeah, that's mostly what I'm using. Oh, and for image generation, I also use like Nano Banana Pro and stuff like that. Yeah. Do you see in the future people giving up on AI because of electricity costs and going back to traditional coding? Yeah. That was also one thing I read before, which I forgot. I could imagine. I don't know. I don't know how long the spending spree will keep on going. Maybe for quite a bit longer than you would think. But it's also possible that some of these companies need to earn money or cut spending at some point in time this year or next year. And I definitely see a future where token cost will increase. And when it comes to electricity cost so I think the overall cost of AI and of using AI also for coding could become a problem. It's hard to predict because it depends on how tight the competition between between Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, XAI, how tight that competition is in the future. But if that gets a bit less tight, I could definitely see a future where doing agentic engineering gets quite a bit more expensive. And I'm not sure if you then go back to writing code by hand. but you might, or you'll just end up paying more, um, and yeah, kind of swallow that pill. But I don't know. What about the brain rot after using AI for a long time? That definitely still can be a problem. I feel like for me, as I said, when I do like agentic engineering, it's a lot about planning and reviewing the code and thinking about it and challenging it, and that works well for me. Where I kind of where my skills also stay sharp. They are definitely evolving and shifting, but it's not like I decouple from the code base and don't know anything about it anymore. So um, I hope and I feel like that works for me with the brain rot thing. I definitely see the danger of, I see the danger of skill atrophy. That's the word. And about your skills like getting worse because you're not using them. It's a real danger. And I mean, it's all brand new and changing so fast. We're still all figuring this out. So yeah. Do you need to learn anything else other than React? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not all React. It's pretty sad that AI is tricking many people into the web only being about Next.js, React, and Tailwind. But yeah, learning about Node.js if you want to stay in the ecosystem, the JavaScript ecosystem, or Bun makes a lot of sense for backend development. And obviously, there is so much software, so many websites powered by Java or .NET. So it's not just about React for sure. Any good way to animate in Angular the way we do with Framer Motion in React? I think for Angular, when it comes to animations, web animations are pretty much the default. I think Framer Motion only has like a JavaScript. Yeah, it's just JavaScript and React. For Angular, I mean, they have their own animations part. But I actually haven't used any library like Framer Motion with Angular, so I don't know what would be the best choice there. If correct guidance makes a huge difference in quality, what makes you think that AI itself won't be able to do that itself? I find that the importance of high quality prompting keeps decreasing. Just not my experience. That's all I can say. Might not be a super satisfying reply, but it's just not my experience with AI. You could absolutely make the argument for that loop where AI can prompt itself so good that the quality of the output will be decent enough. Still, by the way, I'm not sure, but there is more to software than just the code, right? So I mean, one big difference, for example, also is agency, responsibility, and even in a world which to me is not the world yet, and for me it also doesn't feel like it will be soon, but even in a world where AI can write pretty much perfect code, and perfect still of course has errors because code written by humans also has errors and is not perfect, but even in that world, who are you going to blame if things go horribly wrong, if a business loses a lot of money? So you will probably still want humans in the loop just to have someone who has agency, who has an interest in ensuring a high quality. And that alone might be a thing then. But again, that's not my, not what I'm convinced about. For me, the experience is different. But it's not just about, okay, I have something that can write code and that is all I need. Yeah, vibe coding as in not writing more than 10 lines of code. So vibe coding in the sense of not writing a lot of code anymore by hand, I definitely see that. Is this an anti-vibe coding channel? Vibe coding is here. I'm not sure, you tell me. The definition of vibe coding will change. I don't know. For me, it won't. You can change your definition all day long. I've literally just watched AI write a section of my software within controller models. I deleted all potential commits as it generated rubbish. Yeah, as I said, for me, results have been quite different. What I hate about the internet, by the way, but it is what it is that you have to be 100% for AI fan or you're against it. You can be in the middle. You should be in the middle. You should be open to seeing what develops. So that's not geared towards any specific comment, by the way. It's just something I see in general. There are so many experts on everything, and the truth is nobody knows where this is going. I just share my experiences with it and what I believe based on these experiences, and things can change. And a lot of other people should probably be doing that as well. Just be open to it and not be so convinced that they have the only true opinion. Do I think the financial AI bubble will... Oh, okay, I already answered that. The well-paying jobs of the future are in writing prompt injections. That may very well be so. I mean, prompt injections are a huge problem. I did create a video about OpenClaw this week, and I think OpenClaw is a really amazing piece of software and clearly shows us what the future of AI assistants may look like. I still don't know how useful it will be, but I see it being more useful if you could give it broad access to your emails, all your different accounts and so on, but doing so right now would be horrible. Super bad idea, because prompt injection is not a solved problem and not sure if it can be solved. And the issue, of course, is that you can get OpenClaw, specifically in this case, to get stuff you don't want it to do. And there is no way to prevent this right now. So yeah, prompt injection might be working as a prompt injector or working in security in general might not be the worst idea in the future. Yeah, I'm from Germany, and do I think the job market in Germany will get better? I'm a bit too detached from the developer job market in Germany, just because I've not been searching for a job or anything like that over the past years. Germany is not doing too well economically, and I don't see why the developer job market would do better than the rest of the economy here right now. My definition of vibe coding is what I said before. You don't care about the code, you don't know about the code, you don't even control any direction, you don't tell it anything about that, you just tell it, build me that, now make it blue, now make it green, now build me that. That's my definition of vibe coding. And anything else, you have like essentially, you can be on different points here. So let's say this is full vibe coding where you don't care about the code at all. And this is what I call agentic engineering. This is ugly. Okay, doesn't matter. Agentic engineering, or maybe you have like writing all the code by hand here. But I think you can be anywhere here between. And I think the future is this. And vibe coding is great for one-off tasks or throwaway software where you really only care about how it works and you don't care about all the bugs or problems it may have if it does the one thing you want it to do, and you can be anywhere in between. You can, of course, also just write all the code by hand, but I think that will be like a niche thing in the future. What would I say about several vulnerabilities found in Next.js several times? Well, essentially the same as I said about the React.js vulnerabilities. Obviously, like if you are one of the biggest or most popular tools being used, and especially now with AI generating so much React and Next.js code, there of course is like a spotlight on it, and you will always find security vulnerabilities in any software. And of course, there is more search in software that is being used a lot. So I don't see it as as problematic that there are more vulnerabilities being found. I think it's good that they're being found. I think it's just a symptom of that software being very, very popular. Now, it is possible, I don't know, it is possible that in the future, more and more, not more and more, but if AI is being used more and more to write code, and if then maybe more and more code is not very closely reviewed because people feel like that's not necessary, then I could imagine that we'll see more security issues in the future, but I don't know. And that will, of course, depend very much on the exact software and how the people working on that software worked. If my son or daughter now is going to join college in 2026, will you make them pick a computer science or IT department? Well, that is a good question. I thought about this a lot. I'm not in that situation right now, but okay, first of all, I wouldn't make them pick anything. It's their decision. But if I were to choose now, I would not know if I wanted to study computer science. But then again, I haven't studied computer science 15 years ago because I already knew how to code and I felt like I can continue learning that on my own. I rather study something else, but that was my rationale back then. Nowadays, I would feel the same. I think that there is a future for developers using AI, 100%. I'm just not sure if university would be the place that best prepares me for it because everything is changing so quickly. So yeah, fundamentals are important. I've also said that before. But I kind of would probably feel a bit, I don't know, bad or left behind if I were sitting in university, and depending on the university, of course, but then I would learn stuff the way you would have learned it 5 years ago. That would not feel that great to me. So fundamentals are important and all that, but I can learn that without university as well. So yeah, I'm not sure if I would study computer science right now. But for the primary reason being, I feel like it would move too slow, maybe. What about those who like to learn coding? They must learn to code and they must write by hand to level up their understanding. Yeah, I think learning to write code by hand is probably getting less and less important, which is kind of problematic because I feel like understanding the actual concepts, fundamentals, patterns stays important to get the AI to produce good code. Again, if you're convinced that the AI will do it all on its own anyways in a year or so, you may be right, but then of course this all doesn't matter. Not my conviction. But writing code by hand is probably not the future, not all of the code, I mean. So you will need to find a way to learn about the fundamentals, the general patterns, the features of a language or of a library you're using without writing the code by hand. Not because it's forbidden, but just because you might not do it, because humans tend to not do what they don't have to do. But of course, for learning, it was always good if you wrote the code by hand. It's the same with writing on a piece of paper. You learn something better if you write it down. If you just watch something, read something, you're not learning it in the same way. So for learning, I think the tricky part will be that you have to force yourself to do certain things the more complex or complicated way to properly learn them so that you can then not do them anymore in the future. But then again, I think it's always been like this. You learn math in school by writing stuff on a piece of paper and also, of course, by using a calculator. But then once you're in a job, you use Excel, or now you have like agents writing code for you that do certain calculations and stuff. But still, it helps to understand the math fundamentals for which you have to do it yourself first. I'm curious if you ever missed the pre-AI era where we relied on our raw skill alone. I was always amazed by your JavaScript skills. Yeah, thank you so much. I do miss it. Yeah, I do miss it. I'm really split. It's like I find it great that now you can really work on projects and add features quickly. You can move fast, and you can move fast with good code despite using AI when steering it, reviewing the code. I've said it all. But if I could choose, I would go back. I would go back because I personally genuinely liked the flow state you could get into when writing code by hand. I liked that a lot. And I know for many developers, it was always about the outcome, and that is perfectly fine. But for me, it was also about the way and not just about the result. So yeah, I do miss that, but it's not coming back, besides as a hobby maybe. I therefore try to get the best out of this new world and adjust and take advantage of it, because that's the only thing I can do after all. And I'm sure you can get joy out of that too. Right now it's all moving super fast, obviously, but yeah. What are the common mistakes beginners make when adding AI to web applications? Well, I think the most obvious mistake you could make is expose your credentials, your API key, or something like this. Another big mistake could be thinking that users will always use AI the way you intended them to use. You always must assume the worst, not just when adding AI to applications, by the way. No matter what you're building, you always must assume the worst, because 99% of your users will be great. But just like everywhere else in the internet, 1% of your users are bad actors or bots or just frankly bad people. And therefore, when adding AI to an application, you must make sure that you are not vulnerable to prompt injection, and you will always be vulnerable, but it won't be a problem if the user input does not lead to an AI-powered tool call, for example. You want to build an application where you, the developer, control exactly what gets executed when. You must sanitize all input created by users, including input generated by an AI that was in contact with a user. And you must never trust any content generated by an AI, especially when it was in contact with one of your application users. Will I release a course on Codex? I haven't used Codex enough to create a course on it, so maybe at some point in the future, but right now I'm not using it, so I wouldn't be qualified to teach it. What AI course do you recommend for an old programmer? Maybe, of course, I'm going to recommend one of my courses. There are, of course, many other great courses out there as well, but my AI for developers course might be nice because it's a mixture of learning about tools like GitHub Copilot and Cursor, combined with some insights on how I use AI also for planning and stuff. So that might be interesting. The link for that course, in case you're interested, is acadlink AI-4-devs. Yeah. That might be interesting. I think the models will get dumber, but I think Google will win because they got so much data. Yeah, Google is in an awesome position. Yeah, they got so much data. They get so many users. They get so many users, of course, via Google, but also on Android. I think Google is in a prime position for that entire AI thing, which of course is interesting because they were really behind, or it felt like they were behind 2 years ago, but they really caught up quite a bit. And now you could argue they are ahead. Why do you think Germany is so silent in the AI race? I think one reason, to be honest, is that in Germany, in Europe as a whole, we have way too much regulation. You wouldn't be able to build a huge data center here because you wouldn't be allowed to fell a single tree. Germany, I don't want to get into like a political discussion here, but Germany would need drastic changes to catch up with the US. And I mean, catching up is a big term, to get even close to catching up. And yeah, I would love for that to happen. I just don't see it in the current political environment we have here, unfortunately. Uh, um, do you see AI being able to improve, I guess, on cybersecurity the same way as it is improving on development nowadays? Um, in general, I of course see AI as improving in all areas to a certain degree. Now, especially when it comes to cyber security, it will. I'm I'm sure it will always, or in all these areas, be important that you properly steer AI and control AI and give it the right context. And especially in cybersecurity, where it's always been like a cat and mouse game, even before AI or before large language models, right? Um, Cyber criminals are always one step ahead. And with AI, they now got brand new ways of infiltrating applications and machines through prompt injection, which is really, really dangerous because so many people don't seem to understand or care about it. Um, so, in order to catch up with cyber criminals, AI will definitely be an important tool, as everywhere else in development, but it will need very good steering, because all the knowledge it has will basically always be outdated. So for the most recent exploits or attack patterns. So it will always be a conjunction of external context, which I guess will be provided by humans, and AI, which can then work together, just as with programming in general. Um, that's what I would think about cybersecurity with AI. Um, these days, more and more people said they make an app with AI in 2 weeks, but most of them are like scams. What do you think? For your information, I'm enjoying it in Korea. Um, yeah, I my feeling is that most people that post about their amazing agent networks that are building apps whilst they are sleeping and where they are just texting with their AI agent, where are all those apps by those peoples? When you click on their profile, there is no app there. There is maybe a newsletter or some crypto coin stuff, but there is no app there. So we're, to some degree, we're at the worst point in history when it comes to how the internet is, because it's full of bots. It's full of attention grabbing people and bots mostly. And yeah, it's kind of sad, but because of the way the internet works these days, it's all full of people claiming stuff that's just a scam, or that's just not true. And you can sell stuff by creating fear of missing out, and by giving people the feeling that they're behind. And a lot of people are trying to take advantage of that. And for me, for example, the problematic part is, if you look at YouTube thumbnails, which is not that bad, but you kind of have to play that game to an extent, and I try to find the right balance there to not be super rage baity and clickbaity. But if you don't do it, you just don't get the views, and you don't win anything if you don't do that, unfortunately. But yeah, that is the current state of the internet, and that is not going to change. That is not going to change anytime soon. Um, yeah, these are my 2 cents on that. Do you have an advice on how to keep up with AI or not get overwhelmed? My advice would be to really take a step back and don't feel pressured too much by all the people, which I just said, that give you the feeling that you are behind, or that you gotta do X or you're falling behind. If you're a developer, I would really recommend use any tool, Visual Studio Code if you're already using that with GitHub Copilot or Cursor or Claude Code, and give it a try. And give it a try in a serious way. Try to give it the right context, steer it a bit, and see which results you're getting. And don't feel pressured to have a system with 10 agents that work on their own. That's all BS. That's all BS. You can have a system where you can have like a project where maybe you have like 2 or 3 agents running in parallel, working on different features. But for me, most of the time, it's 1 or 2 agents that are working on my code. Because again, I need to steer them. I need to think about what I'm prompting, what I'm asking for. I need to take a look at what they did. I need to take a look at the plans they created, they want to implement. And then I have to check if they really did that. And if you don't care about any of that, you can vibe code your way through the world with 10 agents in parallel, but I don't know why those people never release anything. But if you, my advice would really be to not feel pressured too much and just take it slow and give it a try with one of these tools. I have completed some courses. At this stage, I'm a bit confused. How should I move forward? Try internships or focus projects? I would definitely try to get internships. The job market is rough these days, unfortunately. Building a portfolio of projects obviously will be important. And I've said it before. I feel like since the job market is what it is, you will very likely, unfortunately, need another way of standing out as well if you can't secure that internship. And that could be something like a YouTube channel where you're sharing knowledge, or other kinds of posts where you share knowledge. Could be activity on X, but could be something that brings a bit more to the table and that, most importantly, gives you some reach. Doesn't have to be thousands of people you reach, but every bit of reach you can get with genuinely good content, not with AI slop, but with content where it's visible that you put some thought into it, can, in addition to a project portfolio and so on, help, I think. And I totally get that you want to get a job and not become an influencer. I just feel like in the current situation with the current job market, every little trick or every little extra can help. What do I use in Next.js? Server actions or API routes? I use server actions when using the app router, of course. Deep expertise in a framework or language used to be how I made my premium on the freelance market. What can I give to people an edge in today's AI world? Yeah, I totally get that, especially in the freelance market. Clients might not care too much how you build the application if it's 100% vibe coded, until something happens where they might care, but that doesn't help you if you didn't get the job in the first place. So I think the main thing you can do is try to build awareness and build a profile where you make it clear that for you, you have the efficiency gains AI offers, you can work fast, you're using all these tools, but you give them that extra bit of security by having a human in the loop, a human who really knows their craft, which can set you apart and can allow you to charge higher rates. That is at least how I would try to do it, because obviously you can't win just against just the vibe coders if you don't emphasize this human part. And then there will be clients that just don't care about it, but there is no way of winning over those clients except for super cheap prices, which is not a good option. Yeah. So from the deep expertise in frameworks or languages, I think it simply becomes the deep expertise in using AI efficiently as a developer paired with your developer skills. How am I planning to incorporate AI in my courses? I plan on incorporating it in the learning platform. More on that to come this year, to get the best out of both worlds in a curated way, not in a sloppy way. And for course creation, I, of course, also use AI, be that for little dummy graphics or icons or illustrations, or for, of course, since I use AI for all my projects to also work on the code, also for working on demo projects or anything like that. Or it just is an AI course, in which case AI is the main thing anyways. Um, does my Claude Code course contain access to skills and agents? Yeah, it does. So in the course, I show how to create skills and agents. I show example skills and agents, and I do provide those example skills and agents for download. Yeah. Never heard your thoughts on Bitcoin. Want to share what you think about it? Bitcoin for me is an investment asset like gold, which I therefore wouldn't ignore, but also wouldn't use as the only asset. It's a small part of my portfolio, and I don't own or trade any altcoins or meme coins or anything like that. But for Bitcoin, for me, it has that status of a stable asset. Obviously, no investment advice here, but that is what I'm using it for. Yeah. Um, Most of the vibe coders do not know the importance of ownership of the code. Yeah. Ultimately, the problem is if you vibe code something and something goes wrong, you can't say, oh, it was the AI. I mean, you can say it, it will just likely not help. So that is something I don't see enough in the current discussion. In a world where we all settled on the AI generating everything, that may be different. And maybe that will be the world at some point. It's definitely not the world right now. And if you think that industries change so quickly that it will be the world next year, you are very likely also wrong. Because that's the funny part. There is this bubble in the internet, and I'm part of that bubble, that is all about AI and agentic engineering. And yeah, there is a lot of development there. But then there is like the world economy. And I see it here in Germany. I mean, to this day, there are many tasks, especially if you're dealing with government authorities, that can't be done in a digital way or that take days to complete, even though they should complete within seconds. And that has nothing to do with AI. So, no matter how fast AI develops and moves, for the single reason alone that companies and especially government agencies don't move as fast, the transition will be not as quick as some people make you believe it is. The entire world is not just about San Francisco startups. And that does not mean that the development as a whole may change. But again, still there, I'm not on board with that entire narrative of AI doing everything soon. But even if you believe it does, even then, the entire world will not change as quickly as one little VC-funded San Francisco startup wants to make you believe, or some people on X. Do you think AI is better at CSS versus programming languages? In other words, I really don't like CSS. Am I hurting myself by not getting a very advanced level in CSS? I don't think you need to get a very advanced level in CSS. What I think is AI is really good at CSS, but it can be good at pretty much all code. It will always depend on how you steer it. What works super well for me is that when I tell AI, hey, I want you to use modern CSS features like OKLCH colors, relative colors, and all the color functions for handling dark mode, it can do that really, really well. If I don't tell it to do that, I very likely get CSS code fresh from 2021, which is also not bad, to be honest, but it is capable of writing very elegant, clean, modern CSS code, in my experience. You just have to steer it in the right direction. And you might have to provide some extra context and some documentation snippets or links to a documentation, or at least the instruction to visit the documentation for it to use that appropriately. And that's how it is for all programming tasks with AI for me. Is the hiring going to be impacted due to the emerging AI tools? I think a lot of companies are probably holding back on hiring, especially junior developers. At the same point, I think they will, or they already do want a lot of senior developers. And of course, there is like a limited amount of senior developers, and if you never hire juniors, there won't be any seniors. And so, unless we really get to that point where nobody needs developers anymore, I'm pretty confident that hiring will pick up again for junior developers again, simply because companies will also need those. And not just the senior developers, or the senior developers alone will not replicate themselves. Um, I feel Claude Code is like a release of jQuery. At the time, it was quite revolutionary, but after 10 years, we got something that's 10x better. Yeah, I think that will be the case for most of these AI tools, AI coding tools. They're evolving so quickly. What we use in 5 years will very, very likely be totally different from what we use today. Where do I live now? I live in Munich, in Germany. My guess is that vibe coding will easily improve 10x within a few years. That is possible. As I said, that can absolutely be the case. I don't think it will. Obviously, I also don't want to become a pure vibe coder, because for me, that would take part of the joy of my job away. So that's something to keep in mind. But from the experiences I had, I'm not sure if it can get to that point anytime soon, and nobody knows what will be the case in 5 or 10 years, obviously. But again, what I said about industries not transitioning as quickly holds true nonetheless, I think. And as always, I just say it from time to time. Thank you all for all the very nice messages. I read them all, mean a lot to me. So thank you so much. Did I cover that recent Anthropic article about using AI for learning? No, I have not yet. Introducing Claude for education, you mean? No, I have not yet read this article. But as I mentioned before, I know that more and more of these companies are adding educational elements to their chatbots. ChatGPT and Gemini also have these elements where they can generate quizzes for you, and you get a nice UI for that. And I think that will be one important way of using these tools in the future. Now, just as you still may use books for certain tasks, or books is the main example that comes to my mind when I compare it to the pre-internet era. Just as you still have live teaching or live workshops and so on, I think there will always be different ways of learning for different people, different use cases, and different stages in your learning journey. And therefore, I don't see one replacing the other. But of course, it will be an important part of the market, or of the way people learn. Worst part of AI is if you identify as a builder. AI took that away. Some people don't like being managers, overseeing things. Some people like creating. Yeah, and that is pretty much what I mentioned before. For me, I always enjoyed the process of writing the code, getting into that flow. And yeah, as I said, that's just gone. That is just gone for me, at least. Obviously, I could still do it, but it would, for me, be less efficient than with AI. But I 100% agree. For me, that's also sad. What's the best way to host a local large language model on a laptop with 16 gigabytes of RAM? I think 16 gigabytes might be a bit on the low end. You can run the smaller Gemma models, the 1 billion parameter model, for example, with Ollama. That should work, but it will not be super fast, especially if it's like RAM and not VRAM. If it's VRAM, then that is a better option, of course. But yeah, you can't fit like the 32 gigabytes 32 billion parameter model in there. What do I use most, VS Code or Cursor? I really switch a lot, also because I have courses on all these things and I want to stay up to date. Right now I'm using a lot of Claude Code, but then I also sometimes have certain tasks where I like using an IDE, where I like the convenience of having an IDE instead of just a terminal, and that's then when I use Cursor, or recently also more VS Code, because I think today there was like a VS Code update. Is it this one here? Yeah, or yesterday. And I want to see what's new and how that stuff works, so I will probably use a bit more VS Code over the next days or weeks. If code productivity isn't a high priority, does AI actually help you? I think AI can still help you because it can, for example, also help you with implementing features or learning about features or learning about APIs or things in general you don't know yet. So, for example, if you're building a canvas drawing application like this one here, which is not live yet, hopefully soon. But if you're building something like this, I didn't know a lot about the Canvas API before because I never needed to use it. So I learned about it whilst using AI with it. Obviously, you could also just throw AI at it and have AI write all the code. That then might work for me. It was an option because I wanted to understand it, and especially with stuff like the canvas, for example, you want to focus on having a good performance, so just letting AI do something may not give the intended result, but AI can then still help you, even if it's not about the productivity gain, because it can help with learning new technologies, new APIs. Of course, if you just blindly accept everything, you're not going to learn anything, but if you use it and then analyze what it did and look some things up and Google some things and to learn about it, that is something I also like about using AI. How do you review, understand the code while when built with the AI essentially? Well, really just the way I would always review it. Well, typically in my editor, not in a pull request necessarily, depending on how I work on the project. But yeah, when you're using Cursor or VS Code, they give you a nice div view automatically where you see what changed. If you're using Claude Code, I'm using version control, so I can then use, for example, the version control views that are built into VS Code or Cursor to see changes. Excuse me. So that's how I review the code. I take a look at the changes and then do a normal code review. Take a look at the patterns used there, if it integrates into my existing architecture, if it is in line with the plan we had, and that is how I do reviews. You're an architect who likes writing use effect boilerplate for the thousandth time. Yeah, no, the boilerplate part is definitely not the part I miss. But obviously, and I'm sure you know that too, but obviously there is a bit more. When writing code by hand, it's not about writing boilerplate by hand. I totally get what you mean, though. It was always about finding solutions, and it still is. It still is about architecting software by gluing solutions together, if you want to call it like this, now with help of AI. But still, that process of being in the flow and implementing solutions outside of boilerplate code, that is what I really liked. Is it a good idea to switch into the development industry right now, web development industry? The job market has definitely been better, so that is something that might speak against it. But then again, at least in Germany, the job market is bad in many areas. So, and if we're talking about AI disruption, I sometimes feel like everybody's talking about how developers are being cooked, and again, I shared my view on that already. But if AI becomes that thing that can generate perfect code or code that is good enough, depending on how you define that, totally on its own, then it will not just be developers that are cooked. So then you don't need to get into any industry that has remotely anything to do with computers. And then you can make the argument with robots, you don't need to get into any industry at all because everything will be handled by AI. And I know there are quite a few people that believe that in 10 years or so, we don't need to do anything anymore. AI is going to do it all. And sure, maybe, I can't look into the future. Again, transitions are not that quick, but who knows? I'm convinced there will always be people that will find something to do, something nobody else does or wants to do. They will sell it. They will build businesses on top of that. I don't see that future. For that single reason alone, that people aren't like this, I don't see that future where we all don't do anything and AI does it all. And by the way, I definitely would not be part of those people that don't do anything, because if you got nothing to do, if you got no challenges there, if you just got just your hobbies, I like my free time, but no, that's not my thing. Would you recommend using external services like Clerk, BetterAuth, or build everything by yourself? The great thing about BetterAuth is that you can build your own authentication with it. It's a library, it's not a service, and I'm a huge fan of BetterAuth, and I would absolutely recommend using it for implementing authentication into your applications. Obviously, you can also use services like Clerk if you want a fully managed solution. With BetterAuth, you have your own database, you're responsible for that, but the authentication part gets a lot simpler. So my recommendation would be BetterAuth, unless you don't want to have anything to do with your user data at all and with authentication at all, then you might want to reach for something like Clerk. How to level up my coding skills as a 0 to 1 year experienced developer. As always, build stuff you haven't built before. Obviously, most likely you're going to use AI. Do that, but don't let AI build stuff for you and accept it blindly. Instead, try to understand what it built, challenge it. You can use AI to discuss a solution that was implemented by AI and try to understand why it chose a certain approach, and that way you can grow. And then, of course, build an understanding for the fundamentals, key patterns or APIs that are being used with certain languages or frameworks, depending on what you're working on. And use that mixture of AI, but also critical thinking and thinking on your own. Do I use clean architecture? Obviously, I try to build a clean architecture in all my projects, but not the one clean architecture, but instead a clean architecture that works for me, for my purposes, that follows the rules or patterns I personally like, or I feel happy using, or that work well for me. So yeah, I want to have a clean architecture, but there isn't a single clean architecture I try to follow. My thoughts on no-code platforms and how popular they are becoming. No-code platforms like also Wix and so on have always been important for all the restaurants out there that need a website. So I see that, of course, becoming more and more important, because now with AI, it becomes easier to some degree. But I also strongly believe, just like before, there are many use cases for no-code platforms, no matter if they're using lots of AI or no AI or a bit of AI. But then there will also be many use cases, where you don't want to use a no-code platform, or where you're more efficient if not using one. For example, a couple of years ago, I wanted to set up a website for a friend of mine who owns a restaurant. And I first started using Wix for that, and I'm sure it's a great site, a great service. But for me as a developer, I quickly reached a point where I did not want to live with all the restrictions I got from that platform. And I instead built it myself. Back then, of course, without AI. But even now with AI, I would probably be more efficient if I could build it exactly the way I want to build it. But that, of course, does not mean that there isn't a huge market for no-code platforms. We should have a cafe in Munich. Yeah, I don't want to share like my public address or anything like here, to be honest. Um, so not sure how we would best arrange this. Yeah. Maybe I should do something like a meetup or something like this, though. That might be fun. Not sure how many people would come, but in worst case scenario, I have a coffee of my own, so it might be worth thought now that I think about it. How can we successfully educate managers that AI cannot do everything yet? Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest parts right now, right? Because there are so many people, and you can't blame them, I guess, but there are so many people that are convinced that certain things are possible because they read it often enough. I would love to have a great answer for that. The obvious answer would be to say, well, use AI for everything and show them the result and the problems of that result. But of course, the problems might only become visible way into the future, like months into the future, when maintainability becomes a problem or the cracks start to appear. Because, of course, the reason for why clean code matters or having a clean architecture matters was never about that one fix or that one feature you're implementing right now. It was always about maintaining and extending the software over time. And especially also with AI, if you have a shitty code base, it will learn from that code base or will pick up the patterns it sees there and it will extend it in a shitty way and you will get into that spiral of bad code, which is why it's even more important, in my opinion, to have like a clean architecture right from the start if possible. But I totally get that convincing managers of that is super, super challenging because they can't judge the quality of the code base. And if they just don't care, if they're so convinced that AI can do it perfectly already, maybe the hard part is the only way. Am I currently working on more courses? Yeah, I am, and also on other projects which I'm about to release, or also on that course, on that more modern course taking experience I was talking. So got a bunch of things I'm working on, but courses are amongst them, yes. Yeah, and the transitions are indeed very slow. Is anti-gravity as good as Cursor? It's free. I used anti-gravity when it was released, and back then it was super buggy, and I haven't used it since then, so I don't know how well it is right now. Some people will always do this. You mean code by hand? Like hand knitted blankets and hand woven fabrics are also available to buy today, but the loom still won. So the some people will always do this argument is not useful. It's probably not referring to me because I think I didn't say that some people will always do write code by hand. I think you can do that, but it will be a hobby. I think that's what I said. So, yeah, absolutely. AI for coding one. Yeah. Did you learn any data structures and algorithms? I did. I did. I even created courses on that. Never was a big fan of them being required in interviews. Just my opinion, though. And I still don't think that it's super important to be an expert in data structures or algorithms. Having a good understanding of the most fundamental ones helps, definitely. But I'm not I was never a fan of that whole narrative of you have to be able to invert a binary tree on a whiteboard. I If I would hire someone, and we have hired people in the past, um, I was always more interested, or I would always be more interested to see how they work on concrete problems. In the past, I would have wanted them to see use Google efficiently. Now I would want to see them use AI efficiently. And I wouldn't care too much if they knew how to implement an algorithm from scratch. Mm, yeah. Okay, I already answered that about security. While working as a developer, is it okay to do video editing as a side hustle? Is it profitable and safe? It's definitely okay. Safe is always hard to judge. I can say from my own experience, I've tried a lot of AI stuff that should help me with video editing, and it just isn't there yet, and it's not even close. So for me, video editing is still something a human needs to do, and I don't have super fancy edited videos. I'm sure if you have, it's even more important. But I remember like 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of hype about Remotion. They released some agent skills that helped AI tools like Claude Code use Remotion more efficiently. And in case you don't know, Remotion is in the end, a library, a framework, you could say, that allows you to build videos or motion graphics with code. And it existed before AI already. It's not primarily about AI, but since it's code, AI can, of course, also work with it and write code that is in line with what this library needs. There was a lot of hype like 2 or 3 weeks ago about AI now being able to build motion graphics because it could write code that describes motion graphics. And to some extent, that is true, but I've dabbled a lot with it, and it just isn't consistently there yet. Maybe at some point in the future. Video editing, of course, is about more than just motion graphics. So, yeah, video editing, I'm not sure how safe it is. I'm not sure how much demand there is for it, because I've never worked as a freelance video editor. But it definitely is not fully automatable at this point, I would say. Do I have any suggestions for a 6-year experienced front-end developer who wants to improve himself on architecture or some other advanced topics? Yeah, I know it's a bit boring. Essentially, what I always say. Start building stuff you haven't built before. If you did only front-end before, start building full stack. Start getting into DevOps if that's something that's interesting to you. Use AI, but don't use it without understanding it. Challenge yourself with stuff you haven't worked on before. Now with AI, it's easier than ever to get into such projects or get into new technologies, I would say. So that is how I would try to grow there. And I guess that's all. That is how I would try to grow, I personally. Regarding maintainability, it used to be that it costs so much time to refactor a code base. I'm fearing that now it does not, so it matters less. Yeah, true, but maintainability is, of course, not just about how easy it is to refactor. And the way large language models work, and obviously I don't know how the fine-tuned cutting-edge models 5 years in the future will work, but the way they work today, if you throw them at a code base that is a bunch of spaghetti code, they will give you more spaghetti code. Because as much as they have been fine-tuned and no matter how good they are at calling tools and following instructions, your code base is one giant instruction in the end. It is a bunch of text they will complete with more tokens. And guess what? These tokens will be similar to your code base. So I think a clean code base is even more important with the way large language models work, because if you build up on clean code, if you build up on code that has the architecture, the patterns you wanted to use, the new code will be way more likely to be in line with that. That is, again, my experience with AI. And again, I don't know how that will look like in 5 years. Yeah, we got a second member for the meetup. So yeah, I'll think about that, and I'll maybe that is would be a fun thing to do in Munich, a little meetup, and I would of course try to find ways of communicating it in a way so that on all my channels I share it so that it can't be missed. Yeah, I'll think about it. Using AI is not ethical nor professional because it was created using stolen content and breaking copyright laws. I won't argue with that. Are you concerned for the future of software development in general, like the conundrum of JavaScript React being the most used? Am I scared? No. I think a lot is changing and obviously will continue to change. The fact that React and JavaScript is one of the main things, it has always been my main thing, so not a lot has changed there for me. I do think that it was good, or it is good, to have more choice, more competition, because that means more innovation and different tools for different problems, and that may kind of change in the future with a few winning stacks, a few winning technologies. But yeah, the way things have evolved, we always figured out a way to make it work. I guess so. Even if it's just a bunch of technologies in the future, it will probably work. But it is something I don't have a good answer for. How innovation will look like in a future where you don't have that competition between technologies and frameworks and so on. Yeah, so I don't have a great answer on that. My fear definitely is that AI will, we have that winning stack, the default stack, and we'll have more and more code bases using that stack, so it will become more and more dominant. And it's that self-fulfilling prophecy at some point. Again, you could, of course, make the argument that it doesn't matter if software is not going to evolve a lot, or if the underlying technology is not going to evolve a lot because it's no longer primarily for humans. But even if you make that argument, it's still about delivering user experiences to humans in the end, to some degree at least. If you make that extreme argument, of course, you could say it's all about just AIs talking to each other. Then we don't need the entire front-end stack anyways. But again, you're probably going to, I mean, in a world where, that's getting super philosophical now, but in a world where humans don't need to do anything anymore and there's just entertainment, I guess, well, for one, there will still be humans doing entertainment, or maybe it's all AI generated if you're really dystopian. But who is going to build those user interfaces? Or what are these user interfaces that you still interact with? They still will benefit from better performance, from better technology under the hood. So I think it will always be important to keep on evolving the tech stack. Just as the browser is more capable than ever when it comes to built-in APIs and stuff, it's good if things keep on evolving, and that is definitely something I'm afraid of, that may become more difficult as there is less competition. But I don't know how that future will look like. So that we all had already. We had the hype around 3D vision. The self-driving cars were supposed to replace regular cars, but their development stalled. What could AI run into that might stop the hype? I think the main thing it could run into to stop the hype for a moment, or to pause the hype, then I guess we could simply run into a situation where some of these companies need to earn money and need to cut backs, or need to cut their losses at least. So development might then slow down, but I don't think that's super likely to happen anytime soon. Maybe for one or two of them, but not sure if for all of them. But it could happen. To permanently stop the AI hype, we would need to reach a point where both the models and the tooling can't get any better anymore. And to me, it feels like the tooling is vastly improving every day, and the models are getting better in the sense of they work better and better with those tools. So the internal intelligence of the models maybe doesn't improve as much, but the way they follow instructions and the way these tools like Cursor and so on give those instructions, and how effective feedback loops are being built, that I think is still improving, and that would need to stop to improve to permanently stop that development of AI, I think. By the way, I'm reading all comments. I'm just not commenting on all of them. If they're just an opinion about something I maybe already talked about or so on, but I'm reading it all. Local LLMs are not as effective as cloud-based ones and require tons of hardware. Yeah. So as I said before, I like using local large language models for things like summarizing text or so on. They can be really good for that. But when it comes to AI-powered coding, yeah, in my experience, the local models are not there. You need the big ones for that. I bet you AI could even create a foundation for a new programming language that was pretty good. I think it could. I mean, it certainly could. It has seen enough programming languages. The thing is, with innovation, I really mean it's the kind of creativity you sometimes need for coming up with solutions nobody else thought about before. I'm not sure how well AI will do at that. Because a new programming language in the end is just a copy of an existing language. Not to say that languages can't be innovative. I'm not sure how much or how innovative an AI invented programming language would be, or if it would just be a very good copy of an existing one. That's the part where I'm not sure. What about the optimizing token usage and limits, especially for Claude Code? To use planning phase with example, Opus, and then use a lighter, cheaper model to do the execution. Yeah, that's, by the way, an important point. I think it might not matter anymore in the future once tools might automatically route different tasks to different models, which I think is something that could happen. But using different models for planning and implementation, for example, can be a good idea. So I think little tweaks like this still matter at this point in time. And when it comes to token efficiency, I think that is something that could become even more important if token prices go up, which, as I said before, could definitely happen if companies do need to earn more money or some money at all. So that is something I could see happen. And then, of course, token efficient usage will become more important than it is already. But even today, even where right now tokens are too cheap, most likely, being efficient about tokens is something you should try to do. And that simply starts with concise prompts, where you don't include all the context that could potentially matter, but really the context you know that will matter. And of course, also important there, or something I like to do, steering the AI to give you short, concise outputs, especially if it answers questions or if it makes a plan. You can put that into your agent's MD file or your Claude MD file or wherever to instruct it to be concise, not leave out important details, but keep it short and focused. So I think that is something that also will help there. I think AI is currently configured to go towards the mean. There's, I think the way large language models work, they by default probably go towards the mean because that is what they've seen in the training data. And the most capable models these days, of course, tend to be quite good at instruction following so that they can deviate from the mean. And yeah, but as I said, one thing I also see is that if you throw an AI at a code base, it tends to replicate what it sees. Now, I've read before that it was shockingly good in one project at analyzing that code, if I understood it correctly. And I totally see that, because that is another great use case, having an AI explain code to you. And I'm not saying that you can't make it work with a bad code base, but it will probably require even more input right now if you want to like change that code base, if you want to change it. And if it's just having it analyze it, asking it the right questions to steer it in the right direction, I'm not sure. Maybe it works. I haven't, I don't have a code base of that type lying around to test it. But for even the smaller code bases and projects I've worked on, to me, it very much didn't feel like I could throw it at it and say, please make that better, or please analyze it, find the biggest problems and fix them. And it would do a great job all the time. For example, by the way, if you ask AI, or my experience has been, if I ask AI to analyze a code base and find issues, it always finds issues. Even if I've done it 3 times on the same code base, the 4th time it still finds new issues. And that's not just because there are so many issues in code bases, but because my feeling is it doesn't want to say, no, there are no issues. Instead, it makes up more and more exotic stuff. And that, of course, is a real danger if you let the AI work on a code base totally on its own in a loop, let's say, that it just keeps on finding problems and more problems and more problems. And maybe that also changes in the future. But that is something where still human guidance can make a huge difference in my experience. People often say AI story writers are bad because they are less unique and go towards the average, but that's just a setting currently ChatGPT has. Yeah, obviously, how AI models will be fine-tuned and will behave in the future, nobody knows. But right now, that is what I see. And the question is how creative, genuinely creative and innovative a model could get. Soda Head, sorry if I ignored your message. You mean are you building a world-class feature? I just didn't quite get what this was about. If this is a question for me. That AI was unnecessarily complicated? I guess. If you could clarify, I'm happy to comment on it. I'm working in a company for 7 months, and there, what I learned is how to do ChatGPT, and now I'm kind of confused that if I use AI for coding, then how it's going to improve me as a dev. Mm. Yeah, I've said it before. When using AI as a developer, which you should, in my opinion, it's super dangerous to not continue growing and to just degrade into a vibe coder, which of course could be what we all become in the future. Again, I've shared it before. I don't think that's the case, but I can't look into the future, obviously. If you use AI for coding, you want to make sure you keep on understanding the code it generates. If that's code you've never seen before, if that's using an API you've never worked with before, looking that up, learning about it, asking AI about it is something I would do. Even, of course, that makes you slower for now. It is what builds your skill set, what is important to have as a developer. Because if the future is anything else than AI doing it all, then the developers that have a skill that goes beyond asking AI to build feature X will win over the ones that don't. If you have a deeper understanding of the code AI generates, you will of course be better off than developers that don't, unless the future is a world where AI writes all the code. But if you don't believe in that future, then there is no alternative to making sure that your skills stay sharp and you understand the code that's being generated. Yeah, oh, okay, I get it. So that you optimize till the edge case. I keep going for days. I make the code extremely good. So you mean you or the AI? I 100% agree that you can write great code with AI. Having the AI do it totally on its own, just in a loop, for me has not turned out that well. It can definitely build working applications, but not necessarily applications with the quality I want them to have. And again, I'm not talking about quality in a philosophical way here. I'm talking about concrete bugs, security issues, performance issues that can persist. Because even if you try to use AI to have it analyze and optimize itself, as I shared before, for me, the experience is that you can get into that loop where it keeps on finding stuff, almost to the point where it makes up stuff just because it's not okay for it to not find anything. So that has been my experience here. Have you heard about the Reflections on Trusting Trust lecture by Ken Thompson? No, I have not. Reflections on Trusting Trust. It sounds interesting. I should read that. Thank you very much. What do you think would happen if tomorrow we wake up and no coding agent, no AI is working anymore? I think a lot of people would come to work and not know what to do. Um, and you would probably feel super, super slow again. I think you already have that experience from time to time if you're in a situation where you got no internet connection. Maybe because it's temporarily broken, or because you're in a plane without internet, or you don't want to pay for it there, or whatever. All of a sudden, you can feel how hard it is to look at your screen and start writing the code on your own. So I think that would be kind of the experience. Even worse if there were no AI for many people. Can you name any apps, services, examples that become possible and available now instead of never, or 2 years of development? All I keep seeing are the same apps, services that we've always had. Yeah, so things that are possible now, that haven't been possible before, are definitely stuff related to AI image or video generation, because the technology for that was not there at all. Obviously, something like OpenClaw is not a paid service, but that is something we didn't have a year ago like this. So that are examples, I would say, that are new, that couldn't exist before. I think what will also change is that for a lot of smaller problems, especially people that know how to write code, and at some point, likely also people that don't know how to write code, people will just use AI agents to generate the code. Because again, these are the use cases where I think a deep understanding or perfect code doesn't matter at all. And there you don't have responsibility for that code a lot. So if you just need some utility scripts or software that does certain smaller tasks here and there, I think that is also something that is going to become more and more important. Yeah, I got you. So that AI coding is not bad. Most developers don't care about N+1 problems. They don't care about circuit breakers. They don't care about cache stampede prevention and so on. I think you should care about those things, though, depending on what you're building. But AI coding is definitely not bad. Again, I've said it over and over again. I think as a developer, you should use AI. It is the future of development. And I don't know how good AI models and tools will be in a year or two. The entire industry transition is a different thing and the speed of that. But I don't know how well models and tools will be in a year or two. I have my experiences and my thoughts about that, but of course, nobody knows that. But you should care about the kind of problems you mentioned as a developer, depending on what you build, because these are the things that can break applications, that can make them slow, that can even make them insecure in certain situations and so on. So yeah, I think that will be important. And if AI can do that well enough in a year or two, I don't know. When I try to resolve issues related to specific new versions of a package or program, it often lacks up-to-date knowledge and only suggests solutions that apply to older versions. Yeah, so that's typical. That's, of course, something you can solve in a great way with skills, with the proper context provided by you, which again is the part I mean about steering the AI as a developer. If I'm working with 10-stack start, let's say, React framework I really like a lot, I know there is stuff related to create isomorphic function, create server function AI doesn't know about or always gets wrong. So I'll just grab this article or a link to this article, or at least mention this article, give it to my AI if I know that it's working on a feature where this will matter, and then it will use it correctly. And that is exactly what I mean with steering and staying in control. Where am I reading questions from? From the mixed chat, YouTube and Twitch. Can you name any vibe-coded applications you actually use? I don't know any. Of course, I may be using some that were vibe-coded and I just don't know it. I guess the closest would be OpenClaw, but I'm not using that anymore. I may use it again once certain things, if there is a solution for certain security problems I care about. So that would be one example. But other than that, yeah, my feeling is that a lot of people that propagate just how well vibe coding already is. And again, with that, I mean vibe coding in the sense of not knowing anything about the code, not caring about it, and not steering it in any way, the AI. A lot of the people that propagate that don't have anything that they publish, don't have any apps. Frustrated because a lot of people pretend to know stuff while they really don't. Yeah, I mean, especially nowadays, of course, the way the internet works, there is this entire attention, what's the name? Attention economy, where everybody's competing for attention, and strong opinions are always more exciting and more attention grabbing than weak ones. So there is that. And I've said it before. I'm not a fan of the way this works these days. And I try to find the right balance there, which is hard enough. But yeah, that is just how it is. Opinion on Mistral large language models. Do you use it? I don't. My opinion is that I'm super happy that we have at least something coming out of Europe. My understanding also is that it's not on the same level as the top models by OpenAI and so on, but I'm super happy that we got at least one partially relevant large language model vendor in Europe. So yeah, I would absolutely celebrate if there all of a sudden were a Mistral model that would beat the others. I would absolutely celebrate that. But what about juniors and AI that makes them lazy and cannot think well without it? Yeah, that's the big danger, that you use AI so much and you care about the code or about understanding what it does for you so little that you don't build a skill set you would actually need in order to grow and in order to also progress in your career. And I think that's, by the way, not just for coding. In general, with AI, there is this big danger that you just get lazy and you just don't care about understanding the internals or the behind the scenes stuff. And again, you can always argue, well, you don't need to, because in a couple of years, AI will do it all. Even then, even in that world, which I don't think will happen, but even there, understanding stuff will never be bad for you. So yeah, but people are, of course, lazy. And that is therefore definitely a danger. And especially if you want to grow in your job, you want to make sure that you do understand what's going on. And I see thank you very much for the message. Opus 4.6 dropped. We upgraded our smartest model. So yeah, I will try that tomorrow. And I'm sure we'll now see a bunch of videos coming up in the next minutes and hours about people sharing how awesome this is and that it's their new default model. And then in a week, we will see that people are disappointed by this model. And then in 2 weeks, we will see that it's a quite okay model, or maybe even a very good one. I think Opus 4.5 is a pretty good model. But again, these change so quickly, and it also depends on the software you're using a model in. So if you're using it in Cursor or somewhere else. So yeah, that will matter. But let's see. Opus 4.6 features a 1 million token context window in beta. The question is if that will be available in regular Claude code, or if it will be super expensive and you'll have very strict usage limits, or if it's not available at all. But that would be pretty cool if it works well. I mean, with those large language models with huge context windows, we've seen in the past that even if some models said that they had large context windows, I think there have been studies that showed that quality degraded once you start filling up that window enough. So we'll see if that really works well, but it would be pretty cool if that were a real thing and if we could use it. So let's take a look at benchmarks. Do we have some coding? Yeah, first impressions. Okay, here. Ooh. Opus 4.5 beating it by a fraction of a percentage point. Yeah, I mean, those benchmarks, I don't care about them too much, to be honest, because you can optimize these models for benchmarks, even if you don't really want to do that. But yeah, benchmark numbers are one thing. We've seen it often enough in the last year that models came out, had amazing benchmark numbers, and then people were pretty disappointed. So yeah, we'll see. But obviously, not very surprisingly, we have pretty good benchmark numbers here. But yeah, I mostly care about how it feels when I actually start using it and how well this big context window will work. And here we can already see it. Here, long context retrieval is better in the one with the smaller context window. A common complaint about AI models is context rot, where performance degrades. Yeah, that's what I meant. Opus 4.6 performs markedly better than its predecessors. Scores where Sonnet. So it seems to be better at being good with its big context window when that window is also being used. But again, we'll see how that translates into real world usage and real world experience. But pretty cool, pretty cool. I also thought that Sonnet 5 should be released anytime soon, but doesn't seem like it's there yet. Maybe there was a lot of hype for that just to then actually drop Opus 4.6. How do I do marketing about my courses and apps which I developed? I basically drop them here and there in my videos, and that works quite well for me. I don't want to like be too annoying about it, but mention it here and there, put it in my video descriptions, and yeah, that works quite well. Oh dang, I already have access to 4.6. Yeah, I'll have to check if I also have it then. Is this a beef with Theo? No. No. That is actually not. That's the state of the industry in general, I guess. Not about any particular creators. And it's just, I don't even watch all the videos. It's just what you see on YouTube with the thumbnails the day a new model dropped. That's what I mean. Yeah, but that's a pretty good way to end this stream because I gotta go. Was a nice discussion about AI, unsurprisingly. I mean, it's the thing. And I totally get if that annoys some people. As I said, it's not like I found the world before the AI hype horrible, but it is what it is. So I hope it was still kind of interesting. It was definitely interesting for me hearing your different thoughts, reading about them, because it's easy to end up in a bubble where you only see your point of view. So really, really nice to see all the different angles of looking at that. And therefore, yeah, I gotta go. This, of course, was not the last stream. I try to stream every Thursday. I don't make it every Thursday, but I try my best. And yeah, I will think about that potential meetup in Munich. And could I recommend another streamer to watch now? I don't know who's live. I mean, the Primogen is always a good stream to watch, in my opinion. Not a niche recommendation, but still. But I don't watch a lot of streams, so yeah, that's about the only one I can recommend. But yeah, I will hopefully see you in future streams. I wish you all the best, and yeah, have a great day, morning, evening, whatever it is for you, and hopefully see you in future streams. Bye bye.